Hey, welcome everybody, and sorry for the late start. I I streamed an entire version of the song without realizing that YouTube wasn't on yet. So the YouTube gremlins have got me today, but I'll try and triumph anyway. Just going to give you a bit of an overview of how to work on a song like this. This is a song that we are about to work on in April in the Fingerstyle 5 membership. And I've been talking over the last week about a couple of important tools for working through an arrangement of a traditional blues tune. Sort of the big picture of how to develop the arrangement itself and make sure that it builds and has some arc. Then sort of within that, some ideas for how to improvise based on the melody, so you're not having to start from scratch. And then finally, like at the most sort of granular level, just some ways to look at the groove itself, the syncopation, the coordination between the thumb and fingers, and all of that. So the tune I just played is Nobody's Fault But Mine. The most well-known version for guitar players is Blind Willie Johnson's, which is probably, I mean, as far as I know, that's the original recorded version. But the melody that I am playing in this arrangement is a combination of the Blind Willie Johnson melody and the Nina Simone melody. And if you don't know the Nina Simone version, it's well worth checking out. It looks like everything is working at the moment with sound and picture, but if things go south, let me know in the chat and I will scramble to fix it. This is not like a super in-depth lesson with tab and all that kind of thing, but I do have one visual or two visuals that I want to put on the screen just to kind of help with this process. So let's talk first about arrangements. And we'll start with this. This is something I talked about last week as well, and that I talk about in the membership all the time. I won't shut up talking about it. It's called the 7-step arc. And it's just a set of guidelines for putting together an arrangement. And so I'm just going to explain how this works and how what I just did was based on it. It's easy to think when you see someone play that they just happen to come up with something cool, or that it's effortless to play a whole song. But most people, there's some element of working out what they're doing. And my favorite analogy is one that I heard from Gene Bertoncini, where he talked about the arrangement as a safety net. And in music like this, blues and jazz have a lot of improvisation involved. But if you look at this sort of breakdown of what's going on, it's not even the majority of what's going on. If we start off, and I'll sort of go, oh, darn it, that's not what I want. You don't want to see that. I'll try to keep this civilized. So if you look over here, the order of events is starting with an intro or a vamp, then going through what I call the fundamental version of the tune. That's just a basic framing of the melody. I think this particular time, the first time off camera, I played the fundamental first. The second time around, I kind of defaulted and I played the embellished twice. But the idea is to play a simple version of the melody, then maybe go into something that has more chord substitutions, or a more embellished version with some thirds and sixths or chord voicing supporting the melody. Then here's an improvisation, right? And as you can see, it's kind of central to what's going on, but it's only part of the whole picture. Then something called the shout chorus, which is another thing that I talk about a lot, which is, that term is borrowed from Kansas City jazz of the 30s and 40s. And it's the idea of having, in a band, it would be like the ensemble part that everybody comes together and plays. And it's worked out, but it's designed to have like this kind of peak moment in the tune that has a lot of impact. On the guitar, that might be like a repeated riff-like chord-based thing that you do. But even within that, there are specific things you can use to make it organized and make it cool. Then back to the vamp, or back to the embellished version, and then the vamp. So in terms of what I did, I'll walk through what I just played without playing the whole song again. But I had a couple of different vamps at work in this arrangement. And the first one I had was using these open strings to get this kind of cascade sound. And that is based on the harmony of the tune, but because it exists kind of outside the form of the tune, there's a little more latitude. There's no point in the actual song that goes directly from E to B and E to B like that. But E is the root of the home key of the tune, and B is the 5 chord. So to go rock between E and B7 is really effective for a vamp. And a vamp is just a short sort of rhythmic bit of business, like a short chord progression, maybe going back and forth between 2 chords or cycling through 3 or 4 chords. Just something that you can repeat in the sense of vamp till ready, like do something until the tune's about to start. And so I opened with this, which is kind of a different color than like anything that blind Willie Johnson would have done, but it's my arrangement, so I can if I want to. Then I went into the fundamental tune, or I should have, which is just a steady bass arrangement with just the roots of the chords and just the melody on top. And just from a learning point of view, I think of the fundamental version as just like it's like framing a house. Like, the house isn't done, but you've got up, the structure. You can see right through it, but you know what you're going to be filling in and how you're going to be doing it. The fundamental is a way of framing the tune. It's like you know what the bass is, you know what the melody is, you know what's going on. From there, even without adding in any more notes or any more chords, just by the way that you play the notes that are there, by the way you articulate them, by sliding, by hammering on, you can give a lot more life to the melody. And a little bit of, pulling off or doing some vibrato, sliding, pulling off. And from there, you can start to syncopate the melody and make it even more fluid. But so that's the fundamental version. Next, the embellished version would involve a double stop with the high string, which helps to fill things out, and then a little bit of an answer to the melody with this G and A chord. So put those together, and now we've gone from to and then we can continue. Not much new here, but then a descending bass line, which is a kind of chord substitution. So just saying, okay, we're going to go from E minor to E minor with the 7th in the bass, D, to A with the 3rd in the bass, to A minor with the 3rd in the bass, and then F sharp, the 2 chord, taking you over to 5 and back to 1. So now we've got an intro, we've got the fundamental version, we've got the embellished version. So next comes the solo. So in terms of the solo, here's where we can kind of go down a level and talk about something called rhythmic contour. And this is the idea that the solo does not have to be a complete invention from scratch. One of the best ways to start thinking about improvising, especially if this is new to your playing, is to model it on the melody. And if you look at this tune, it's an 8-bar tune, and you can break it into 4 2-bar sections. So the first one is, that's 2 bars. And then the next one is, and then 3rd, and the fourth phrase is. So it seems like, oh, there's 8 bars of music, but really, if you look at what's going on rhythmically, we've got the first phrase, which you can, if you just take the notes out and just look at the rhythms, it's. And you can use that, what I call the rhythmic contour, as a container to hold the notes you pick. Because the next phrase has the same rhythmic contour. It just lands on a different chord. Now, the third phrase is a little different. Right? It's a longer phrase, and the rhythmic contour is different. There's more space in it. So it drags into that second bar. But then the last phrase, now it's going over the C to the B to the E, so it sounds different, but the rhythmic contour is exactly the same as the opening phrase. So we have this shape, and all we have to do is say, well, we're in E and it's a bluesy feel. Let's take the E blues scale and find some new things to play with that rhythmic contour. Right? Not that complicated. Now, once we have a phrase like that, we can come up with more ones. Keep it simple, keep it in the blues scale. And so that's, now we've got like a bunch of choices for that opening phrase. When we get to the next phrase, we need the same kind of thing, except it needs to land on a B. So instead of having all these phrases that land on notes of E minor, like the root or the fifth or the third, like, now we need to land on a note that works with B, like the root of B, or the flat third of B, or the fifth of B. So we could take the first phrase and we could land it on a B. And now we have a little call and response. So now we need something to do over the E to A. And so we know that the rhythm is a little bit different. So we could do, and the only rule really is to keep that rhythm and land on a note that matches the A chord this time. So maybe the root or the third or the fifth of A. So even if we took a really similar phrase to our opening one, now, by landing on notes of the A7 chord, we can really spell out the sound of the 4 chord instead of just playing blues licks. So we'd have and now we could use our opening phrase, but keep the new chords from the last 2 bars underneath it. So, yes, this is a worked out idea. But it's a variation on the melody. And if you took each one of those 4 spots in the tune, bars 1 to 2, excuse me, bars 3 to 4, bars 5 to 6, and bars 7 to 8, and you worked out just 3 or 4 variations for each one, now you've got whatever 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 is, number of ways to get through the tune as you keep mixing and matching all that stuff. 4 times 4, 16, 64, right? Or is it 64 times something? I don't know. It's a bunch of ways to do it. So, yeah, I think it is 64. Send your mathematical corrections and put them in the chat. So that's this part. That's the solo. So now we've done the solo, right? That's obviously a bunch of things to work out, but there's a specific way you can work on it, is my point. This idea of looking at the phrasing and looking at the rhythmic contour and building a vocabulary of licks is something that anybody can do once they have the basic coordination to play fingerstyle blues. So then we're on to this part, the shout chorus. Now the idea is that the solo is supposed to be sort of exciting, right? It's supposed to build energy. And so you want to go somewhere from there. And so the shout chorus is designed to really kind of cap the energy of the solo. And the shout chorus is meant to be built out of, it's meant to have like a rhythmic quality, a somewhat repetitive quality, like a chord-based thing. 256. Thank you, Guido. I needed that. Let's look at a couple of elements of the shout chorus. So the chord progression of the shout chorus follows the form, and the bass tends to move with the chord progression, unlike a vamp, which is often done with like a pedal point or something. And for the groove, we're going to keep to like a steady bass. But these are four of the things we can use to create a shout chorus. So we can use either common tone or guide tone voicings. And so common tone means you keep a note in common, say on top. So like you might have, in this case, if we're going to go between E minor and B7, we can look for notes they have in common. So they both have a B. So we could play an E minor 7, and we could ultimately end up on a B7. So playing a chord and coming up with some sort of rhythm to play over a steady bass. Or if we want to keep a note composition, maybe we can use something like this. There's the flat third. Now you know what to do with a B7 sharp 9 flat 13 chord. You can get this common tone on top. Don't worry about what those notes are if it doesn't make sense. But the idea is you want to find notes, in this case, with a common tone on top, and then do something rhythmic with them. And the rhythm of it and the chaining of the chord progression does all the heavy lifting. Now you could also do something called a guide tone line, which means you're hearing the notes move. You're hearing like one note. You could decide, I want this sense of climbing up. And this is kind of what I did in the version that I played at the beginning of this session, where I went. I decided that my guide tone was this fragment of the scale, but I harmonized it with thirds. And I also kind of went in a stepwise pattern. And then finally, I kind of combined it with the idea of a common tone by keeping the open high string going on top. So I've always got that ringing out. And a final thing about the shout chorus is that it doesn't necessarily take up the entire chorus. In fact, it's really common to play like 4 bars of shout and then leave the back half of the chord progression, the last 4 bars, for more improvising. So. And then again. And so it's kind of a upside down or backwards call and response, because you have the big part first in the first 4 bars, and then you have something a little bit smaller with the single note improvising at the end of that. And that comes straight out of that jazz tradition of where you'll hear like the Count Basie band. They'll play like this huge thing for 4 bars, and then Lester Young or Buck Clayton or somebody will like solo for 4 bars, and then they'll be back into the shouting again. So let me just go back to this. So now we're here, shout chorus. So then into the vamp. So there are 2 vamps in this arrangement. One is that cascading thing, and the other one is based on that, right, which is almost like an acoustic blues approximation of something electric, like either something that like sort of like a 60s blues rock band would do, or it's really actually, it's also kind of swiped in part from Green Onions, right? So, but it's with a straight 8s feel. So, and in this case, it's taking that little fill and turning it into a whole thing that you can cycle. So the bass is very straightforward. And on top, it's getting this lick, and the second time around, and then that leads right back into repeating the embellished version, which includes fragments of the vamp, and then has the descending line. And one thing that I did, I think, but I didn't mention, is tagging the back half of the melody. So taking the last 4 bars and repeating it when you get around to the end. And then into the opening cascade vamp. Right, and so that takes you through the whole thing. So let me play through the whole tune, and then I'll take some questions if you've got them. I can also talk a little bit about the right-hand coordination and how to sync up the bass and the melody. But I'll play through the whole arrangement now that we've talked about all of these parts of it. So here it is again, and you can kind of keep your eye on the form of what's going on. Okay, so that's the idea of how to put all the pieces together. So this is a tune that we'll be doing this coming month, so April, in my Fingerstyle 5 membership. And that's kind of how we'll take the tune and break it into pieces and put it back together again. I think it's really important not to focus so much on learning like, you know, a big like multi-page pile of tab as to look at the tune from the most sort of granular, like this is the 8 bars that makes up this tune, and then work your way out so that at any point when you're working on it, you've got this piece of it in your hands. Like even if you're playing exclusively the fundamental version, you've got the tune, you can play the tune. And so you're not memorizing like, oh, this grip, this move, that voicing, but you're seeing it as part of an overall picture of what the song is. So let me talk just a little bit about that, because this is a process that I call the horizontal 3-step, just 3 parts to it. When you're learning the basic tune, break it down to the bass, the melody, and what you need to do to make those 2 things happen. It's really, you know, fingerstyle guitar is not the grips so much as it's these horizontal events. It's the bass is moving this way, the melody's moving this way. Your job is just to execute the mechanics that allow those 2 things to happen in parallel. So what you're going to do is start with the bass, and the bass is your chord progression. You know, it's what's going on. And I'm just going to make sure that everything is still streaming, because you never know, but it looks like we're good. The bass, the thumb, is telling you what the chord progression is, what the groove is. It's basically your whole rhythm section. So you're going to just go through the bars. And again, you can think of this phrase by phrase, just like you think about the improvising. So 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the first 2 bars. And then 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the second 2 bars. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you go through like that, you can see it's just a lot of steady bass. It's E for 4 beats, and then E for 4 more beats. Then the third measure is 4 more beats of E followed by 4 beats of B7. And if you group them in these 2 bar sections, it's easier to keep track of where you are and not get lost. Because it's like, oh, 2 bars of E, then a bar of E and a bar of B, then a bar of E and a bar of A, then a split bar of C to B and a bar of E. So once you've done that, then you want to go and look at those phrases again and play just the melody. So you really start to hear the melody and the way that it's phrased. And in order to make sure you don't get your thumb involved, which is going to be, you know, if you start playing the melody with your thumb, it won't really work when you go back to put the bass in. Just rest your thumb on the low string and use your fingers to play the melody. Okay, there's the first phrase, which is answered by that. Then the third phrase, and then finally. And when you separate out the melody from the bass, you can hear that the first and the last phrase are identical. It's just the first time it's over the E chord, and the last time it's over C to B to E. So you really only have 3 phrases to learn. I always like when there's less to learn. So step 1, go through and play the bass. Step 2, go through and play the melody. Step 3 is where the rubber meets the road, because this is where you've got to see how do these things go together. And this melody has a lot of notes on the downbeat. So you're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and every number, every 1, 2, 3, or 4 is a pinch if the melody is happening at the same time. Pinch being thumb and finger at the same time on the guitar. So, and then every note on an and is happening in between with just your finger. Those are really your only choices right now. 1 and 2 and 3 mostly having pinches. Pinch and pinch and pinch and pinch. And when you identify where the pinches are and where they aren't, you can start to see how syncopated the melody is or isn't, because syncopation just means putting the emphasis on the ands, not the strong beats. And so when you have that note of the melody, that fourth note, you can feel that it's got a little bit of a push. It's really coming a little bit ahead of where it belongs. Right? If you play the melody super straight, you have 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and, but you don't. You have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that melody is coming a half a beat early, and 3 and 4 and 1. It's anticipating the bass, and so that's what makes the melody swing and what makes it feel syncopated and cool. So you go through that for each phrase, and then if you've ever had trouble getting your thumb and fingers to behave, if you start by knowing the thumb is on the downbeats and then looking at how the fingers syncopate with the melody and where you're pinching and where you're not, that will start to clear up a lot of what's supposed to be going on between your thumb and your fingers. So all of that is a way of taking it from the big picture all the way down, from the arrangement, I'll come back now, from the 7-step arc all the way down, from the 7-step arc and the pieces of it, the vamp, the fundamental, the embellished, the shout chorus. And then where does the solo belong in there, and how do you develop the solo? That's a specific thing you can work on in the context of the arrangement. And then down to the most granular level, just working on the thumb-finger coordination. Using the tune for that basis is really helpful. But if you're already feeling fluent with an arrangement, but you're working on the improvising, if the improvising is based on the melody and the rhythmic contour, then you can also practice your improvising. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but you can practice your improvising by taking the different phrases you want to be able to play and breaking them down in terms of that 3-step, horizontal 3-step, so that any lick you're trying to execute will ultimately come down to how do the fingers coordinate over the thumb? How does that lick lie over the groove? If you have right, it's still a matter of where are the pinches, and where aren't they, and how is it syncopated? So you get the bass, which is no different. It's just 4 beats of E, and then the lick. And then once you can play the single notes, you start lining up the pieces and seeing what the grips are to get those two things to coexist. And so then you can start to have things like that you want to drop in. And that's how it works. So that's kind of the process. So again, that's what we do in the Fingerstyle 5. That's just some ideas you can take and apply this to any kind of tune that you're working on, any kind of fingerstyle tune. This will even work for alternating thumb stuff. So I think I posted the link below, but fretboardconfidential.com/register if you want to go to a page that has more of this information kind of laid out as far as like how it works and what we work on and how to sign up. Registration's open through Thursday night, the 1st of April. So go and check that out if you want to. And now, if you got questions, we can go for a little bit longer. We're going to go, this is an hour long, so 15 minutes. If people have got things that want to know about this arrangement or about any of these techniques or improvising ideas, I am happy to address them. So again, just working from the big picture down, thinking about, and those 7 steps are not written in stone, obviously. Like you can shuffle those elements however you like. You can even open with some improvising. You can improvise on the vamp. You could open the tune So that's a completely different kind of intro. So that whole order of events is pretty flexible, and you can trial different kinds of things within it. But the main idea is just to create a sense of build and a sense of narrative that the tune is going somewhere. And that's really what you want to do. So, pretty quiet in chat land. Maybe we just need to wrap things up, and that's okay too. I have also had the notion that it would be fun to start answering some questions in live streams like this in general, and maybe answer one a week or once every other week. So if you've got another idea, like a question or a topic for a future live stream, post those as well, because I think that would be fun to do. Here is a question. Let's see. I'm going to make this a little easier to read. From Mike. So the preview from last week was a month of info on Fingerstyle 5. Yeah, kind of. It was basically just these are the things we're concerned with in the Fingerstyle 5. Basically, we go through a tune a month, most months. Sometimes we just like focus on a particular topic or two. But in general, the idea is to take a song and put it through the paces. So the first week, I'll post tab and videos of a fundamental and an embellished arrangement, which now you know what those are. And then either that week or the next week, I'll post exercises or like the horizontal 3-step approach to working out just the mechanics of the tune, so that all the syncopation and everything for the tune itself makes sense. Then I'll do improvisation exercises, so things to start working on, building your vocabulary for that specific tune. And then finally, I'll do a live stream talking about how to arrange the song, the big picture, how to sort of build out the 7-step arc for the tune. So last week was a lot more in-depth as far as like just taking each step and really going to town on like, this is how we do it. But Motherless Child is another tune that we had done. So we've dealt, both that and Nobody's Fault are both steady bass 8-bar blues in E minor, but we've done alternating thumb stuff. We've done, all different keys. We've done 12-bar blues. We've done, a whole spectrum of stuff, and all of those tunes sort of stay archived so that even when you join, whatever the tune is that month, you can go back and work on older tunes if you want to. And there's at least a dozen of them right now, given the full treatment of like fundamental and embellished arrangement, exercises, improvisation, arranging the whole thing. Okay, here's another one. Let's see. Example from Mike. Examples of passing chords and chord subs during the shout chorus. And from Jared. Even when you're learning just the melody part, don't you need to check on the filled out version so you don't need to relearn the left-hand fingerings? Let me do that one first and then get back to Mike's question. That's a really good question. Yeah, I would say you definitely want to keep the thumb where it is. That's actually going to be pretty similar for both versions. And then, yeah, like if you're going to like the melody, say on the B chord, you definitely want to sort of use this finger to get the melody that you're going for so that the middle finger is ready to come in on the bass, that kind of thing. So yeah, you do it. I try to write out the two versions, to arrange the two versions so that they can coexist. They're supposed to lead from one to the next, but they're also supposed to be, like, there's two purposes to the fundamental and embellished, the way that I teach it, which is, one is that they should lead one to the next. Like going from the fundamental to the embellished should feel like a development within the arrangement. So it's giving you the first couple of pieces of the arrangement. But they should also work parallel. Like you should be able to look at the fundamental and the embellished and go, oh, I see, based on the fundamental, I see what we're adding to turn it into the embellished version. So on those first two phrases, mostly what we're doing is adding in the open high string. And since that's open, and since we're using the ring finger for it, there's not that much different between going and doing. So it's pretty similar. The only difference is we're also going to add in that moment in the space where we're just playing the bass in the fundamental version. So yeah, agreed. You should definitely be mindful of what's going to be coming, and if going back and forth is the best way to do that, then that's a good thing to do. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, post again. So then let's see. Okay, let me get to Mike's question. Examples of passing chords. Example of passing chords and chord subs during the shout chorus. Okay, so, during the shout chorus. Yeah, okay. So let's just, let me think about this for a second. We're trying to go from E minor to B7, right? So a lot of what we can think about is how can we kill time on E minor, which is maybe rocking between 1 and 5 and 1 and 4. Because what you really want to do is go away from E minor and come back. That's kind of what chord substitutions amount to when you've got a kind of static situation, like 3 bars of E minor. So we could have, right? So I'm just going between E and B7 and then C7 to B. Now I could also do that with the Freddie Green voicings. Right, so I could have E minor, B7 with F sharp, E minor with the 3rd in the bass, back to B7, E minor, C7 with the G in the bass, the 5th in the bass, and then B7. So we could have. Right, and so I'm keeping a common tone on top. Until I'm not. Now another thing about this is, and we can do that on top too, and I can just sort of pedal the E on the bottom. And that can be up here too, like let's see. Could use diminished chords as substitutes for the 5 chord. So I'm basically using a diminished chord as a B7 flat 9. Hold on to your hats if this doesn't make sense to you, don't worry. Just listen for the sound. Here's E minor. Here's another B7 with the flat 9. So we could have. Like that. So and then again. I kind of blew it, but that's the idea, right? So just those kinds of chord alternations. It's reminding me of something, but I can't think of what it is, which is driving me crazy. It's some tune, somebody's arrangement of something. It's on the tip of my tongue. Well, I'll figure it out later. You don't need to sit me and watch me try to remember what that is. God, it's driving me nuts. Okay, so another thing is so that's a way of just killing time on E minor. Now another kind of chord substitution is dressing up the 5 chord, and so in the embellished version, we already have an F sharp to B7, so 5 of 5. So we could have so we could have E minor to B7 to E minor to B7, E minor, the 3rd in the bass, and then F sharp to B7. So the F sharp takes you to, is the 5 of B7, that takes you to the 1. So, and I know this is like, like jazz algebra to a lot of people, so don't sweat it. I did actually do a whole special topic, like a live stream for like an hour last fall in the membership, just talking about chord substitutions, because this is such a squirrely thing, but it sounds so cool that we all want to know how to do it. So, so there's that. Like, there's more about how to do that stuff, but if it doesn't make sense, it's something you can kind of slowly acquire the sort of cerebral chops for. But so that would be. I'm sort of being mindful of what's on top. Common tone, and then this note on top. So that's just a couple examples. Chord substitution is such a big topic, but just you can break it down into those two kinds of rules of, I'm killing time on a chord or I'm dressing up the 5. Those are the two main things to start with. Okay. A few questions here. I'm just going to read through them and then I'll try to get to them. From George, any advice on ear training? Not sure how to go about getting better. Good question. Let's see. Oh, hey, David Cozens. Greetings from Austin. Nice to see you here. Let's see. Jaffe, you're saying Sensitive Kind might be the song that I'm thinking of with those chord subs? That might be, but it's not that. It's something else, but it could be in there too. Okay, here's some advice. Someone recommends an app called the Functional Ear Trainer. For learning how to hear stuff better, to some extent, it's not something that I can only speak to the way that I remember learning how to hear stuff. And that was from the intersection of learning and trying to figure out stuff off of records. So just like brute force, like listening and trying to just having the hunt and peck get slowly better over time and learning tricks for figuring out what's going on records. And then learning theory, because learning theory just gives you a better set of guesses. Like if you know what chords belong in a key, then once you've figured out, I think they're playing in E minor, then if you know the chords that are supposed to be in E minor, you have a better place to start your investigation from. And as you just sit and work through, these are the chords that usually show up in this key, then when you hear people playing, as you start to figure out stuff by listening, you start to recognize certain guitar sounds. Like a D chord has a certain sound, and it has the sound of the third on top. Now, if you don't know what a third is, that doesn't really help. But as you start to listen more closely and try to approximate what you're listening to, you will start to acquire kind of a vocabulary of like, that thing always sounds like that. You hear someone going, you're like, it's that thing, or it's this thing. It's got that funky sound comes from those relationships within the chord. So learning a little basic theory in conjunction with trying to figure out stuff for yourself from recordings, or heck, now you can do it. You can watch people, right? You can go find the songs you want to understand and watch people play them. Oh my God, you can go watch Mississippi John Hurt on those old Pete Seeger, TV shows or whatever. Incredible, right? So it goes by really fast, but you've got this visual element and then you've also got the audio element. I'm a big fan of trying to figure out stuff off of records. I think that's just a really satisfying skill to possess. And you can just start really simply. The best advice I ever got about learning off records came from Lee Konitz, who said, I took this one lesson with him, and I've mentioned this before because I really had no business taking a lesson with him. But we were talking about transcribe, and he said, you want to learn how to solo, transcribe solos. And I said, well, they're too hard. I can't figure out what Charlie Parker is doing. He said, don't start with Charlie Parker. Start with, Louis Armstrong. Start with someone who plays in big, broad strokes, And when you can do that, then move into something a little more elaborate. So yeah, you don't have to start trying to transcribe Blind Blake. Just try to figure out what key that John Hurt song is in. Try to figure out if that Robert Johnson song is capoed. Try to figure out, just something basic about the song, and then worry about some of the details. And also, this is like one of my soapboxes, like, don't worry about learning the entire song. You haven't failed if you don't transcribe an entire 3-minute song. It's a big win if you can just transcribe a couple of bars of something. If you can just go, oh, I figured out what that chord voicing is. Or, oh, I figured out that the thumb is going in that moment. Just when I was transcribing solos, like blues solos and jazz solos, I rarely worked out the entire solo because it's so much work, and you're not going to memorize it and assimilate it anytime soon. But if you go for the fill between 2 lines in a blues, right? If you hear like, and then someone goes, focus on those little moments where it's isolated and it's like it's got a beginning, middle, and end, and it's only a couple of notes. Focus on figuring out that, and you'll slowly build up your skills. Ear training is just like any other kind of chops. It takes time, and you have to start small and with these small, measurable, achievable things, and gradually build up your abilities to do it. Okay, off my soapbox now. Okay. Well, we're getting close to, I have no idea what time it is. It is just about an hour. So I'm going to wrap it here, but I want to thank everybody for showing up. This was a lot of fun. Again, if you think learning about tunes this way might be for you, I run this monthly membership called the Fingerstyle 5, fretboardconfidential.com/register to find out more about what's involved and how to sign up. Let me take this one last question from Lovat. Am I singing the melody in my head? If so, any tips? I'm not literally singing the melody in my head. When I'm arranging a tune, I will listen closely to vocal versions of the song to make sure that I'm playing the melody right. I want to start from a point of view. Of knowing what the melody's supposed to be, so that if I start to sort of go a little bit off the map, I know I'm doing so from a point of knowledge, not doing it out of ignorance. But I am thinking about phrasing. I am thinking about articulating and phrasing the melody and making it sound musical. So I'm trying not to think so much in terms of what are my hands doing and what is this difficult thing I'm doing with my right hand, but how does that melody, where's the emphasis, and try to play it musically. So that's, to the extent that I'm thinking, that's what I'm thinking about. And here's a last question from Topcat. I'm amazed at the number of people that avoid theory. Check out the, yeah. I mean, theory is just another tool, and I understand why it's intimidating, especially when someone like me starts throwing around like the 7#9. But it's really just a language to describe stuff more than anything else. It's just labels for stuff. And so if labels for things makes it faster, then hooray for labels. It also makes it easy to see the similarities between the different things you're doing. If you're playing an E and you go like this, and in terms of theory, I'm taking the flat third and I'm bending it towards the third and landing on the root. That's something you can then transpose and say, well, if I'm in C, can I do that? Oh yeah, there's the flat third to the root and the flat 7. So yes, I can take that and move it around. So you don't have to learn everything 12 times. You can learn it once and then transpose it around. Can we get that theory lesson from last year still? I'm not sure. Do you mean the theory workshop that I did in December or January? It is not currently available, but I am trying to figure out the best way to make it available again. And there is also an entire theory module inside the membership that takes you from 0 to chord names and modes and all that kind of stuff. And so if you're in the membership, that's a resource that's just sitting there and you can work through it at your own pace. So thank you all for being here. It's been a lot of fun. I'll play a little bit on the way out. And if you want to sign up, registration's open till tomorrow night. Drop me a line if you got questions, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you next time.